Good afternoon, everyone, I should say. I was about to say good morning. That would be wrong, wouldn't it? The day goes away with us and we don't even notice. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm delighted to have Tevin, Nick and Amanda with us. I'll allow them to introduce themselves in a moment. First off, just a little outline of what we're going to be doing. We're obviously talking about understanding the Kickstart program today. So it should be a really interesting session. ISE has a Kickstarter started with us a couple of weeks ago, so I've got some knowledge of the program and how it works for us, and really happy so far. It's been great. We will have some time at the end for questions. So there is on your control panel, which probably is on the right hand side of your screen, you will see a little box that says questions. If you can pop your questions in there as you go through is fine, or at the end when we're finished, and we'll put those to the speakers and get the answers that you need, hopefully. And if you have any technical problems, pop something in the chat and we'll try and pick that up as well. It should be fairly straightforward. We are recording today, so we'll be able to share it for those who registered and weren't able to attend, or for anybody else that wants to see it afterwards. It's always a good resource. And I think that's all I need to say as an introduction. So let's move on. We will allow Tevin and then Amanda and Nick to introduce themselves, and then we'll get down to the nitty gritty. So Tevin, why don't you talk us through your role?
Sure, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tevin. I'm the Kickstart executive here at PathwayCTM. I came for the Kickstart scheme myself, which is pretty cool because now I have both sides of the initiative. I work very closely with Nick. My role, I suppose, in a nutshell, is looking at connecting employers with talent on offer. And I love the idea of that. And there's so much potential we have around doing it. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what I do. And I enjoy doing it. And as well as that, we offer wraparound support through our learning management system, which is basically, again, in a nutshell, a portal where we provide value to Kickstarters. Again, because I'm a Kickstarter myself, I thought it's a great project to take under my wing and look at providing the best way possible. But again, that's pretty much what I do at PathwayCTM.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tevin. You can see the enthusiasm shining out of you. So it's great that you're here. Thank you for joining us. It's amazing. Amanda, let's turn to you. Why don't you explain your role?
Great, thanks. Good afternoon again. I'm Amanda Scott. I'm the CEO of Forest Healthcare. We've got 13 homes, all giving provision to adult social care in London, towards the south, a home in Norfolk and one in Buckinghamshire. So I was delighted to be asked to participate in this because I'm not a Kickstarter, but I remember the kickstart of my own career. And sometimes you just need to find your groove and find your tribe and find what really makes you want to come to work every day. And what better opportunity than now to put adult social care in the spotlight and lead people towards us. I started as a carer, and adult social care and nursing is all I've ever really done. So it would be wonderful to inspire other people to see opportunity through Kickstart.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amanda. That's such a great way of kind of positioning the program as a whole. That inspiration piece is really important. So, and I know for your industry how critical that is. So fantastic. Thank you. Nick, let's turn to you.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. I'm Nick. I'm the account manager and Kickstart lead at PathwayCTM. So yeah, I've been at Pathway for around a year now, but I started to head up this project at the turn of the year. So yeah, working with a number of employers, really helping them understand the scheme and help deliver the scheme for them as well. I know we'll touch on it a bit later, but yeah, working closely with the DWP as well. And yeah, alongside that, I know you mentioned earlier, Sarah, as well, that you've hired a Kickstarter, which is great. Obviously, we've got Tevin here who we work alongside each other, which is great. We also hired 2 other Kickstarters who've both been absolutely brilliant as well. So yeah, I know Tevin alluded to it. sort of seen both sides of the scheme, and yeah, we're going to sort of provide as much information for you today. Just an apology for Amanda. Sorry, we didn't have a cool little emoji for you there. They've all been sent to us for Pathway, so I'm really sorry we don't have one.
That should be your goal in life. Should be going over this like I'm cool little emoji. I want one now. So. Brilliant, thank you. Now we do have an apology. Chris was hoping to join us today, but couldn't make it. So I'm going to attempt the invariably impossible and try and share a little video from Chris to say hi. So. Let's see this one.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris, founder and CEO of PathwayCTM. I'm really sorry I couldn't be there today for the webinar that we're doing with the ISE. Thanks so much for working with us on that from you guys. Holiday got the better of me, but I wanted to just quickly put in a couple of minutes just to say my part, because I'm really passionate about what we're doing here. PathwayCTM, for those of you that don't know, we're a social enterprise. I set up about 6-7 years now to work with young people from schools and colleges to best support them in their next step. We're actually working on the Kickstart scheme with the likes of Mazars, who I know are members of the ISE, and indeed you'll hear from a company, Forest Healthcare, today on their examples. We did it because we believe in supporting young people, but let me just talk you through a few things that come to mind around Kickstart scheme, because it has been a bit of a frustrating journey. So firstly, job creation, meant to be 250,000. You know, we're at about 150,000 at the moment. So I do believe the government will get to that 250,000 by the end of the year. Many people, like the Labour government, don't think they will, but that's not the real problem. The real problem is actually on the demand side. The placements actually started are apparently less than 20,000 at the moment. So with furlough ending at the end of September, there may be a spike. But what we're seeing here is that we don't have enough young people coming through the program, so many companies backing the scheme, yet it is improving and it is getting better, as Nick and the team from our team at Pathway will explain. COVID being to blame has been a big part, but I've been really proud of my team and how they've gone above and beyond to find ways around it. So much is going into the job centres, speaking to young people on our clients' behalf. And now there's job centre careers fairs happening as well. So I do think, again, by us being physical, that will help young people, particularly the types of young people who might need to see stuff and feel it before applying. So I think that's important. But I'm really proud of us taking it into our own hands. And we've got an event happening next week, which we'd be delighted to promote your brand. If you're getting involved in Kickstart, you're thinking about it, or indeed you have current roles available at the moment, what we're doing is we work with thousands of young people leaving school or college. We want to make sure that they know about Kickstart. Yeah, it'd be really good to have your attendance today for the session, whether it's live, asking Nick and Tevin questions. Do ask Tevin about the amazing learning management system that we've set up and that's helping the Kickstart young people through our program with our clients, because he's worked brilliantly on that and he's a shining example of the program works, and give young people an opportunity and train them up like we all do, you know, in the ISE community. Forest Healthcare and Amanda, finally, I spoke to her right at the beginning, and I think what they're doing is revolutionary in terms of leading the mark for social care, and many different companies are now copying that method, and I'll let her explain what that is. But again, I think it's about being creative around our job roles and helping young people really find their way to going, yes, I want to have a go at that. So I hope today gives you lots of hope to try again, to keep going and to persevere with the Kickstart scheme. It is a meaningful scheme, and we are, you know, really well placed to help you with that. Nick and his team at PathwayCTM, they're coming up with great ideas, working closely with DWP, and I just hope that today is a good session. So thanks so much, and I'm really sorry that I couldn't be here. Thanks.
So thank you to Chris there. I hope that worked okay for everyone. Really great to have an introduction from him to the experience that Pathways have. It's fantastic. So let's move on to the meat of the session and get into a bit more depth of what all this means for all of us. So Tevin, let's start at the very beginning. How did you come across Kickstarter in the first place?
Sure. Well, at the time I was freelancing, and but I was looking for a full-time job, and this was during the pandemic. Of course, it was during a national quarantine, and so the jobs or the roles that I were applying for was either closing down, staff were being furloughed, or the industries I was wanting to get into were incredibly competitive. I have a degree in advertising, And if anyone knows anything about the advertising industry, it's really difficult to get into, more so that the unemployment rate was incredibly high. So I found myself in universal credit. And around this time, I wasn't very confident, nor was I very optimistic. Not just about getting a job, but also about my future, which is quite unlike me. So the nature of the Kickstart scheme, which was introduced to me by my work coach, was that whilst I couldn't go onto a job board and apply for roles, I would be referred to them. And this came from my work coach understanding my skills and my strengths, and understanding kind of industries I'd like to get into, as well as, analyzing my CV. And so I applied for different roles after being referred to them. And I came across PathwayCTM, and I suppose the rest was history. But my first introduction came from my work coach whilst I was on the universal credit.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And those work coaches are so important in terms of understanding skills and ambitions and everything else, and pointing in the right direction. So it's brilliant. How's it working for you? How have you found it?
Could you repeat the question again? Sorry, you just cut off.
How is it working for you?
Oh, it's absolutely great. Like I said, I came into this scheme, with not a lot of confidence, in the sense that I've been away from work for a very long time. I came into this role in particular feeling quite overwhelmed. I had a bad case of imposter syndrome, and which is quite understandable because, like I said, I'd been away from work for a long time. I weren't sure if I'd be able to keep up with the rest of the team. But how did I go from that to having a growth mindset and being quite positive? Well, I suppose it comes from the support network that's provided to me on this program. For me in particular, was with the support network from my colleagues. I have Nick, who I work with very closely, and he's been absolutely amazing. A lot of patience, and helped me, find my feet. Our CEO, Chris, gave me that confidence again, and helped me understand that I do indeed have skills and strengths to succeed in this role. It's speaking to my colleagues and understanding that, we're all in this together. There's a sense of belonging and meaning together. And quite interesting, a lot of people felt the same as well. So again, that idea of belonging together and support network in general really helped me, I feel, settle into this role. I've been there for 4 months now, and there's a huge, change from when I first started to where I am now. I'm a lot more independent, and I'm just a lot more forward thinking and proactive, and I love the idea of that. So that's pretty much how my experience has been on the program so far.
That's amazing, thank you. And I have to say, although I said, we ISE put a Kickstarter just joined us only 3 weeks ago, and already in that time, you can just see that confidence start to build, and it's amazing. It's an incredible journey. So it's great to hear how successful you are being, and I've no doubt will continue to be. And all of those things, why would you recommend, or how would you recommend it to another individual that maybe had the opportunity to join a scheme or a program?
I suppose I'd look at it from the angle of 6 months to really hone in on your skills, 6 months to really understand your skills, and I suppose strengthen your weaknesses. I think there's something quite nice about the idea of that. For me, again, I came into this role in particular, I suppose going back, I'm a creative. That's what I do first and foremost. But this role is, I suppose, the polar opposite, and that was one of my qualms coming into it. But I looked at it from a growth mindset perspective, and really understood that I could actually, this is an opportunity to hone in on this, hone in on account management, speaking to employers, networking, all these things that I wouldn't do otherwise. 6 months where I can fail, and it won't be a huge deal because, I have that support network. I love the idea of that, Sarah. I definitely say 6 months to hone in your craft, 6 months to be proactive, 6 months to volunteer for things. For me, I was speaking to our CEO, Chris, a couple of days ago, and I was telling him how one day I'd love to do a TED Talk. It's one of my dreams. And he mentioned that, well, why don't you get on some more events? I figured, it's perfect because it's a chance to re-practice and hone in on presenting and speaking and all of that. So yeah, again, it's just a very meaningful scheme, I'd say, like Chris said. And yeah, that's pretty much how I'd sell the idea.
Well, I think you're a perfect advert for it, I have to say. Thank you so much. I mean, that's a level of, enthusiasm and belief and commitment that's, that's just amazing and, really powerful to hear, I think, firsthand. You can often see these things kind of written down and, you kind of get a testimonial here and there, but there's nothing like hearing it from somebody who's, experienced it, and you're a good way through it now. So, a couple of months to go and you will leave with, all of that confidence and the skill set you can take to other places, and I've no doubt you will be on a TED Talk in the future at some point. That's amazing, thank you. We may well, come back to at the end. I'm sure people will have questions for you as well in a bit more detail. So thank you for that. Amanda, it's a completely different experience from an employer perspective, obviously. What I mean, you talked a little bit at the beginning, but what tipped you over the edge in terms of getting involved with the scheme?
I heard a colleague talking about Kickstart, actually, and it was through the period where the pandemic, the first wave of the pandemic had just started to ease off, and you're beginning to turn your head to your workforce for the future, but also having this real sense of more macro instability economically. What jobs are going to disappear for people, what choices are people going to make, are people going to leave the sector because they've been burnt out by their experience so far. So it really turned my head to what opportunities are there for me to enhance our workforce. And then paralleled with that, I think, was kind of a shocking moment when I realised that the King's Fund had prepared a video to explain to people what social care was. And it's just that revelation to yourself. I've occupied this world for most of my adult life, but it doesn't mean that everybody knows what social care is.
No.
If people are confused, why would they aspire to have a job in social care? So fortuitously, Chris popped into my inbox at that point with an email saying, hey, we connect. So timing was perfect. The universe was moving in my direction. So I did connect with Chris, and we had a great talk, and he explained really fully what Kickstart was all about. But I had this sense of reservation as well, in terms of my managers are very tired. They've been through a lot, and the worst thing that I could do right now is give them more work to do without justifying that. So I invited Chris to join one of our town hall Teams talks with our home managers. He talked about Kickstart, and all I could see around the virtual room were heads nodding and embracing the concept and embracing the idea. So that then was a journey forward and a no-brainer to me. We can do this. We can embrace this.
Oh, that's amazing. And it's interesting talking about, social care as a career. I work as an enterprise advisor, or volunteer as an enterprise advisor. I'm down in Cornwall, and some of the careers leaders I've been talking to, they've had so much more interest from young people into areas like social care, nursing, because of the visibility of that through the pandemic. So, on the one hand, as you say, you've got people that may be burning out or choosing to leave, but there is definitely an increased level of interest from young people, because I think that recognition of the importance of it as a sector. So it's really interesting. And how has the experience gone for you then, since you took that leap and decided to sign up? How have you found it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about positioning it properly, and really describing the programme properly to the organisation and to the individuals that you're looking to take your Kickstarters on board, rather than it being a concept that people kind of park and don't understand properly, so don't engage with. So we worked hard on that, and actually what we also did was consider what the person coming on board might want from us, rather than what we might want to offer as well. So I then reflected on my own nurse training, and if somebody had at the beginning of my nurse training said to me, what sort of nurse do you want to be when you qualify, I think my answer would have been, I don't know, I haven't tried it all yet. But when you train as a nurse, you rotate. You rotate through medicine and surgery and paediatrics and so on. So I reflected on that, and I thought, well, social care, you know, people turn to their thoughts to the carers, which are a huge, you know, our largest workforce, and, you know, can be hugely commended for the work they do. But there are so many other skills that sit within a successful care home and within social care. So what we devised was a rotation. First, somebody that wanted to join a care home, so they have an opportunity through a 6-month programme to work in the admin side, to work in the kitchen and food service and delivery, and to experience maintenance, to experience wellbeing and activities for residents, as well as the caring. So even if there's a particular part of that programme that you don't particularly enjoy, just as I didn't like orthopedics when I was doing my nurse training, what kept me going was in 8 weeks I get a chance to have a go at something else. I still have to try, but I don't have to see this is it and it's probably not for me then. So that seems to have gone down really well. And we've had hundreds of referrals. We've had a good number of that moving to interviews, and we now happily have hired our first 2 or 3. We're still in the early processes of this. And I think one of the important things to say is that one of my discussions with the managers was to look beyond the person in terms of the norm that we would look for. So to look away from, you know, how many jobs have you got and how many people can give you references, and look to some of the softer communications that Tevin talked about, you know, the desire to use their skills that they already have, or perhaps for some the sense of hopelessness that they haven't been able to find their niche yet, and look at the heart of the person as well as the skills that they may bring, because we can train the brain, but somebody comes to us with a good heart, then, you know, we can take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sarah, who's our Kickstarter, has got a customer service background, and again, you know, it shines out of her that desire to, you know, serve people well, which of course we're a membership organisation, so that is kind of at the heart of what we do, but you wouldn't necessarily make that leap. So I think it's helping them find that, where those skills and that belief, that heart, as you say, kind of can really fit into the organisation and really, you know, add value. That's what you're looking for, isn't it? You know, to add value. So yeah, it's really interesting. And any advice for other employers that would be maybe struggling with the same kind of hurdles that you had?
I'd say engaging with the people that are going to be looking after those that are on the Kickstart programme, and don't rush at it. You know, it shouldn't be something, I think, that you say, let's give Kickstart a go on a Monday and then tell everybody to get going with that on a Friday. But make sure you explore properly, make sure you understand properly, and then spend time with your team explaining to them how it works, and then explaining to them what you're hoping to give people and what you're hoping to get back from people, and really look for that engagement, because mountains can be climbed if everybody's on board and everybody sees the purpose. So start with the end in mind. The end is that there is a real give and take to this. We get something out of it. We're drawing people towards us into a sector that, you know, now has this spotlight looking at them. And you know, make sure that that communication is given the time and attention it deserves.
That's really useful. Thank you so much. And again, I'm sure we'll have questions at the end, kind of delving a bit more detail into some of the technicalities of all of that. Before we get to that point, let's talk to Nick. You've got a heap of experience clearly in running the programme. Talk to us a bit more about what's involved.
Sure, yeah, and yeah, just following on from Tevin and Amanda there. Yeah, I mean, I'm now scared that Tevin said he's on 4 months and I got 2 to get on the scheme, so yeah, that's flown by. And yeah, and Amanda as well, I've worked with for a while now, and yeah, you know, echo what she says really. You know, understanding what the scheme is about, you know, not rushing it, and you know, just working closely with employers and having that slight leniency, you know, and sort of seeing past what it says on a CV. But yeah, in terms of, you know, the scheme itself and what people need to know, I guess, you know, top line, Chris sort of mentioned it a little bit there. So yeah, it officially started in September 2020. A lot of major companies initially were really quickly on board with it, which I guess you can agree or disagree with. So we really sort of got going January, February time in terms of speaking to those employers. And yeah, it's been a scheme that I think ideally they want to you know, get 250,000 jobs out there, as Chris said. We're not quite at that level yet, but we also have time to go as well. So hopefully we can hit that target. Yeah, just from my experience, you know, working with employers and working with the DWP and working with candidates is, yeah, I guess being patient and understanding. You know, as we do a lot of work with students and school leavers, and there is a general anxiety with young people at the moment, and part of that obviously is the pandemic. I think people's mindsets have changed, and you know, that's not just reserved for school leavers and youngsters, but I think that age group has been hit hard. And you know, by no fault of your own, you could have been out of work for a year, because of that. There's been, you know, a range of people who have been out of work. So it's really been patient, really understanding that, you know, let's provide some guidance, let's provide some hand holding here. You know, these talented youngsters who've been on this, who are on this scheme, if they've not applied for a job in a year, or they've not been able to work for a year, things change. So, you know, let's help them through it, and not just leave it to their own devices and just let them do the research. That's not why we're here, and we want to support those young people as much as we can. From, I guess, just from an employer perspective and what to expect. Basically, how it works is you apply for the scheme. We do that application on your behalf, and it takes around 3 to 4 weeks to hear whether you've been accepted or not. I understand generally if you sort of apply yourself, there's about 50-50 chance in terms of percentage, and because of the size of the scheme, you don't get the feedback to why you've been rejected. I'm not going to say we're perfect, because we're not 100%, but we're in that 90% ballpark for having employers accepted onto the scheme, which is great. In the meantime, we work with you on those job descriptions that will eventually go on the job boards, and that takes, well, they say 2 weeks, but it's taking less than that. So you've got 4 weeks to be accepted, less than 2 weeks for the jobs to go live. They go live, and then we start the recruitment process, and we're very much involved with that with the employers and the DWP.
Cool, thank you. And then any more kind of process points that are I'm just thinking of questions that the audience might well have. That, you know, what happens after that? How does it come to? How do you get from there to actually having somebody on board?
Absolutely. So yeah, I'll take you through sort of the hiring and then the payment process as well. I know Amanda mentioned referrals, applications, and that type of thing. And yeah, Forest Healthcare have been definitely the most popular employer from our side. And I think that rotational side that Amanda mentioned, you know, every, you know, a month in each department, I think that's such an attractive thing for a young person. And actually, it's just giving that young person a chance to you know, really pinpoint what they're great at. So yeah, we you basically will then link up with your local account manager at the DWP. Now we often take the lead on that on behalf of the employer, just to get things rolling and to do a lot of the legwork. And we then have a conversation with them about the vacancies and basically, can you please prioritize these and push them as much as you can. So referrals come through, and what a referral is the work coach recommending that that young person apply for the job. So it's not technically an application, but you'll still be notified, you know, so and so from so and so has shown interest in the role. So you've got a marker there that, you know, the DWP is actually actioning, the work coaches are actioning. You then have applications, and there, as it says on the tin, that's people putting their CVs through to you. You are welcome then to contact them and set up those interviews. What we suggest, and I know speaking to some of the home and centre managers at Forest Healthcare, is yeah, let's bring that young person in for an interview. Let's have one interview with them, a detailed interview, and then make a decision off the back of that one. And I think that's completely fair. I think you can find out enough information from those. And I also think, you know, if we're going to be dragging processes out to 3 stages, I think it's too much, and you're going to lose interest. So that's what I'd recommend, and what Amanda at Forest Healthcare have done really well. And then yeah, that's the hiring process. You know, you draw up a 6-month contract for them. It's as is any other employee in the business. And then I guess the last thing to touch on is the finances. So as your gateway, we get a fee which we agree to split with you, and so every placement you make, you get that fee, which is to mainly help with any training or any equipment that would be needed. But obviously, if there's some left over, there's some left over. And then also the salaries are automatically done by the DWP as well, sent into our account. We're legally obligated to release that within 5 days, and then we send the salary payment to the employer. How it works is the day the candidate starts, they will get the placement fee. Then 6 weeks from that time will be the first salary, so it's 2 weeks in arrears of a monthly basis, and then it is on a monthly basis from there. So you're just always 2 weeks behind in terms of the payment, but that's how it works. It goes through us. Don't like to make it simple, but we make it work. So that's sort of the process from hiring to payment. If that makes sense.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Nick. You're right. It's not always entirely simple, but I think from when the team started to where we are now, actually a lot of the little bumps in the road have been ironed out. So I think it's working a lot more smoothly than certainly it did right at the very beginning, so from our experience anyway. So that's good to know. You touched on interviews there. Let's just come back around a little bit before we go for questions and talk about the interview process, because I obviously we've had some experience with that, but I'm interested, Amanda, you know, in terms of interviews, how are they different for Kickstarters than maybe any interviews you would have done through your normal hiring process? Were there any differences?
Not in terms of the process. If I'm talking about kind of granular expectations, we'd still expect somebody to attend an interview dressed respectfully and having done some preparation for it. You know, we still want to look for that level of commitment to wanting to join the home. I think Nick made a very good point, and that was the advice that I was given when we were moving into Kickstart, was treat this as though you were employing somebody, anybody else, in terms of, you know, your broad set of expectations. The biggest thing for me is making sure that language that we'd use with somebody that had previous skill and experience is going to be potentially a foreign language to somebody who's never walked into a care home before. So competency-based questions are going to be tricky, but looking for people's perceptions of older people, perceptions of the type of tasks they think they may be involved with, some experience of their own, you know, parents, grandparents, and or other experiences that they've had, that they can draw on to show that they have a commitment to kindness and a commitment to caring. more particularly than looking for skill sets of competencies. It's just fairer. You know, it has to be titrated to the person that's coming along. So yes, I would say that has been really important to us, to make sure that we offer a fair process. The last thing that we want is for somebody to come along. Tevin mentioned, you know, that period of moving into Kickstart and that imposter syndrome. The worst thing we could possibly do to anybody who's come along for an interview is leave them feeling worse than they felt when they made the effort and came along to us. Even if they don't get the role or get the opportunity at that point, we should leave people feeling really good about themselves for having come along.
Yeah, that's a lovely point, I think. Kevin, so what was your, I mean, I appreciate Nick sitting here as well. What was your experience from an interview perspective like? I mean, how did you feel prepared? Were the questions appropriate? Did you feel supported in the interview process?
Yeah, absolutely. And during that time, I was interviewing quite a bit because I was getting a lot of referrals from my work coach. And so I was actively trying to go out my way because I really needed a full-time job at the time, or at least a job where, you know, I was earning some income. And so, you know, as any interview, I did my research, prepared. Quite interestingly, actually, I'd never had any experience working within the students and school sector. That was really interesting to me. And I suppose that was kind of where my imposter syndrome came from. Is not really having the experience. You know, I'm at the time, I thought there was a lot more candidates with that experience that would have easily, you know, gotten a job. But again, just having experience, or rather understanding the company, understanding their values, their ways of working, and also really shining a light on my transferable skills. I think there's something quite nice about transferable skills and, you know, taking them to different sectors and industries and roles and responsibilities. So I have experience, you know, working within startups, especially in growth-oriented roles where I feel like I can really use my skill set to help grow a company. And I really made sure I highlighted that during my interview. Some of the questions I received, well, there was one question I received from Chris, and I don't know why, but I just remember it. It was, whilst I have the experience that I do, he asked me, well, why are you in this scheme then? Why are you in this initiative? And for a second, I didn't know how to answer it because, like I said, I feel like I do have the skills and you know, strengths to be in these roles. But then I just realized we're going through a pandemic, you know, and that really hit me for a second. And it made me want to be a bit more kinder to myself because I'm really hard on myself. You know, what comes with being quite ambitious and having audacious goals is, you know, being hard on yourself. But understanding that we're in a pandemic and Chris empathizing that really helped. And you know, I suppose I'm here, you know, so that's a good thing. But yeah, my whole interview process till now has been pretty seamless. And yeah, just like any other interview, I do my research.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. I think our experience was slightly different in that Sarah's not straight from school, had some work experience, but not through the university experience. So it was far less confident. I'm not saying you were confident when you went in, but really having to kind of tease out even, you know, understanding what a transferable skill is. You know, there's some work to be done in these interviews. I think when somebody really is lacking confidence and perhaps a little more junior stage in their careers, so a lot to think about. And one other question from me before we open it up more widely. We touched on job descriptions earlier. And I'm just curious as to the process you went through, Nick and Amanda, to craft a job description that was appropriate for the scheme.
Sure. Yeah, I can sort of go ahead firstly on that one. Yeah, so basically what happens is we're sent a blank template by the DWP when the jobs, well, we've got them stored, I guess, from past use, but they do send them when you get accepted. And there's a number of details in there. So, you know, contact information, is there public transport, what wraparound support and training are you providing? And that's something I just want to, I guess, touch on sort of after this question as well, just from our end. But yeah, in terms of the job description itself, As the gateway, we try and do as much legwork as we can, but we can't write a job description for an employer because, you know, we're not within that business, and, you know, they're within their right to put what they want to look for. We can just provide advice in terms of, I know Amanda mentioned it, understanding, you know, the language being key, and that's also key in the actual the job title itself. I've had many conversations with the DWP, you know, what does this role mean? You know, what does it actually mean? Instead of giving it a real sort of, you know, does what it says on the tin. You know, you can come to an interview and you're going to know exactly what you're going to get from the job description, from the title. So we just put little bits of knowledge that we've got from the scheme, but it's mainly down to the employer and you know, Amanda to put that, you know, really smart 6-month rotational role together. So yeah, I'll hand over to Amanda just how you, I guess, came up with that in the team.
So, I mean, one of the real advantages of Kickstart is that you're not hiring somebody with a short-term goal to have them integrated into the count of numbers within the workforce. And then that allows the person to develop a pace that's suitable for them, and to really have an opportunity to observe and ask questions and be exploratory in the way that they work. You know, one of the challenges with any induction when you're hiring to that permanent role is that there is a moment where that person needs to be in the workforce and counted in the numbers, as we say. So it allows the rotational job description to pick out the key elements that you would want somebody to start with thinking about and leave having an understanding of, rather than necessarily a competency of. So if somebody, for example, when they're supporting in the kitchen, leaves understanding the importance of the right foods for the right people based on the diets that they need, the importance of hygiene and cleanliness, and the importance of health and safety when working in the kitchen, that within that rotational experience, those are broad enough statements to then underpin underneath them, well, what do I need to do to understand that? But a lot of that can be shadowing and then picking up the skills that build into greater skills behind that at the person's own pace. So if somebody, for example, who's spending their 4 weeks in the kitchen thinks, I don't like any of these stoves and I don't want to go near them, and I don't like these chemicals, I don't understand them yet, then they can learn about them, but there isn't the expectation where you need to, and you must understand that. So it gives that flexibility of learning and experience.
Interesting, thank you. And we'll talk about training just a second. If that'd be a good time, if you want to pop a question in the Q&A box, then please do. We'll have a quick chat about training and then come to any questions from the audience. So Nick, you started to mention that training is clearly a critical part of what the Kickstart programme is all about. So do you want to give your thoughts on how that best works?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is, from our perspective, you know, from a Gateway's perspective, we don't want to be just there to help with applications and drive that. And obviously there's a lot of conversations with the DWP, and now COVID restrictions have lifted. As Chris said, we're seeing a lot more physical interviews, which are a lot more engaging. So we've actually been into job centres on behalf of employers. We're willing to do that. We're willing to put in the legwork. We're willing to sort of help any way possible from that sense. But what I wanted to, I guess, highlight is also the support that we offer throughout the placement as well for those Kickstarters, and yeah, how we do that basically. So once the Kickstarter is on board, obviously, as Tevin said, it's a 6-month placement. The goal and the hope is that, yeah, we can extend past 6 months, and that's obviously music to our ears when employers can do that, and I understand it's not possible every time, but we basically have put together numerous bits of support for those placements. So first and foremost, we run 2 inspiration sessions every month, and those are hosted by Tevin, and basically We speak to you know, people like Amanda who've really succeeded in their industry and worked their way to a really brilliant position, and just have a conversation and talk about, you know, what were you doing when you were 18? What fears did you have? You know, what blips did you have in your journey? You know, we want people on the scheme to understand that everyone does have challenges, and everyone, you know, has, I guess, bumps in the road to get to where they're at. So that's something we've done, which are going really well. We also run a webinar on a monthly basis, which is run by Max, who's our outreach manager, and supported by Tevin. And that's basically a 6-part series where it's really improving the skills of those Kickstarters. So the session we ran last month was understanding your strengths. Max is an expert at delivering them, because this is almost what he does for a living with schools. So he's a really great presenter. We've got one actually coming up this Thursday for our Kickstarters, which is on CV writing and building, and we'll then obviously continue that on a monthly basis. And then finally, you're probably wondering what's on screen here. It's just a few screenshots of our learning management system. So it's been split into 3 areas. So as you can see, there's one area is construction. We have health and social care, because we've got a number of brilliant employers in that sector. And then we've got a general view as well. And basically, it's like an online learning module, I suppose, and you work through the questions. We've got resources, we've got reading, we've got sessions and events and videos that we've run in the past with a variety of companies, and we're continuing to build and build that as time goes on. And full credit for that, as mentioned, goes to Tevin, who's really put everything into that, and it looks really good. And it's just another thing that we want to add on to our support of the placements. And then final thing on that is, if you're in the position where you've taken on a Kickstarter and the 6 months is up, and you know, you either can't keep them, or you're in a position where, you know, it's not going to work out for the business, or whatever that reason is, we've made a promise that we'll bring them onto our program. As Chris said, we work with school leavers and young people, matching them up with employers. We'll take those Kickstarters, we'll bring them onto our program and help provide them with employability opportunities and skills building as well. So that's just sort of the wraparound that we offer, I guess. Just wanted to get that across on top of the work that we do with the employers as well.
Brilliant, thank you. So we've got a couple of questions in, a couple of straightforward ones, probably for you, Nick, just because you've got a wider experience of different employers. First one from Roger saying, do the roles have to be full-time?
So yeah, in terms of the scheme, what is covered by the government in terms of the finances is 6 months, and it's 25 hours a week. So that's what's covered. We and other employers work with, you know, in terms of different hours and different rotations. So Tevin, for example, you work 9:30 till 4 Monday to Tuesday, and that covers the hours. You know, we've got another Kickstarter who works Monday to Friday, but a shorter window. So yeah, flexible on that. If you want to hire them for 40 hours a week, more than welcome to. All you'd have to do is just cover that 15 hours yourself. But that 25 hours does get covered by the government, and is paid for. So that's how that works.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Andy asks, what's the criteria for candidates to be considered for the programme?
I mean, in terms of getting onto universal credit and onto that system, yeah. So basically, the way that works is, you know, I've spoken to the DWP in the past, and it's not actually too tight a criteria, which is quite nice. I know, Tevin, you were doing some part-time work, weren't you, and still are, which is great. So it's to do with earnings. So yeah, if you're under a threshold, and then obviously those who've potentially been out of work for a long period of time, you can also apply that way as well. Circumstances, they do differ, so I don't think there's a magic answer to that question, but you know, happy to speak about those if there is any sort of particular option that you're thinking about, or if you have someone in mind in particular who you are sure or unsure of could be on the scheme. Happy to talk about that. I do know the goalposts do move from time to time, but it is just to do with those earnings being under a certain level.
Brilliant, thank you. And Cheryl's asked a couple of questions. So we sort of touched on the first one, which what happens after 6 months. But would the candidates interview for a full-time position at employer? And then could they go on and do another Kickstart scheme with an employer? What is the sort of destination point after that 6 months is finished?
Yeah, I mean, it's really whatever the employer sort of makes of it, I suppose, and what they want to do. Yeah, I mean, we work with a number of employers, and the majority, I think, obviously want to see the talent first, but have said, you know, if they are, you know, good and great and involved, then we do want to offer that position. I know, and then from that perspective, in terms of that, is there an interview for the role, or does that continue? It's really discretion of the employer, I suppose. So I know some will be like, brilliant, that 6 months was great. You know, we're just going to hold an interview because we want to see how you've improved, we want to see what you've learned, and then we're going to move you into a certain specific role. Alternatively, you know, that doesn't have to be the case, and it's really up to the employer. So yeah, that's sort of how that works. And yeah, just from a perspective of the Kickstart scheme itself and how that works from the candidate side, it does stop in December this year. There was talks of it being extended at some point a while ago. I cannot say either way, but I believe it won't be, which means your final sort of acceptance can be December, and it would June 2022 is literally the end of it, in terms of that would be 6 months following. So yeah, that's the time frame looking at. Yeah.
So do you know whether an individual, if they've completed a Kickstart program, let's say in August, could they join another one in September with another employer?
Yeah. So again, it just would depends on those earnings and how that would work out in terms of the universal credit and how they would fit onto the scheme. They could do that. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. And Cheryl asked about pay, but I think we've answered that. So there's a pay level that government compensate for, but you could choose whatever level above that and whatever hours above that you as an employer need. It's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, they cover national minimum wage for the age group, and they cover national insurance contributions and pension if they are of age for that. I know, just because we do a lot of work in the care sector, I know that some employers have chosen to knock the pay up a little bit, just to sort of fall in line. More than welcome to do that. You just cover the difference, and again, like I said, with the hours, you would just cover the difference there as well. Totally up to you as the employer.
Cool. And then a question from Roger. Sorry, those are all at Nick at the moment.
Sorry.
Can you be studying part-time at HE level and still be eligible?
At what level, sorry?
If you're studying at HE but part-time, so there'll be no earnings from that, obviously. Does studying preclude you from being eligible for the scheme?
No, not at all. And that's part of why it is that 25 hours, because it does, like I said, you know, Tevin, you do other bits and bobs on the side, don't you? And that's fantastic. And again, was a massive reason for us, you know, not sitting on laurels and showing that sort of drive. So yeah, that's really why it's in place, is to allow that time. And I've spoken, as I said, Tevin's got a degree, and I've spoken to others who've got a degree, but I've also spoken to 16-year-olds who've just left school with GCSEs. So everyone's going to be different in what they want and what they want to use the time for. So that's why they've allowed the flexibility.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Amanda, let's just come back to you. We've got 5 more minutes. So what are your hopes? You've got 3 on the scheme, I think you said at the moment. So what are your hopes for them when they complete their 6 months?
I mean, in an ideal world, it would be amazing if those candidates convert to work for us and be part of the Forest Healthcare family. There is always that question of, is there the vacancy? And that's the tough bit, isn't it? You know, you throw your heart and soul into it, and then at the end of it, there isn't a vacancy for the particular area of the home that you'd like to work in. But, you know, aspirationally, if every Kickstarter that came to us ended up working with us, I would see that as a huge success, and kind of ticking the box of where I started out on this journey, which is, you know, let's give something back, but at the same time, you know, let's draw something from this, which is bringing people towards social care that wouldn't have thought of it or considered it before. So yeah, aspirationally, that would be, you know, fantastic. But if people come and they decide it's not for me, you know, I want to take a different pathway, wouldn't it be great if that person left with confidence, more confidence than they arrived with, and with more endorsement that they could take away with them? So if somebody arrives with nobody that they can turn to that can give them a recommendation or even a reference, but they can leave with a home manager, the chef, the maintenance guy, all happy to say this person did a great job and showed interest and you know, showed a desire to learn, then, you know, if nothing else, we send somebody onwards with a confidence that they didn't have before, and something that they can own in terms of endorsement that they didn't have before, then that would be a good second best.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And that's just like any experience of work, isn't it? Sometimes you have that experience and it just ticks a box for you, and you'll have a light bulb moment, and, you know, especially on a rotation scheme like yours, which gives, you know, so much insight into the possibilities. But if they end up in one of those kind of roles in another organisation, then you also know that you've achieved something by doing it. So that's amazing. I think we should have Kevin have the last word on this as you are a Kickstarter. So, I mean, you've already shared so much about your experience, which is amazing. What do you want out of the next 2 months, do you think, before your programme comes to an end?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it, Sarah. I think it's definitely responsibility. I love the idea of responsibility, even coming onto this programme. And I was going to mention it earlier, but something I suppose I've been craving in both my personal and professional life is responsibility. Responsibility in PathwayCTM is, you know, connecting with industry employers, networking. It's being on calls like this and representing the organisation. It's like Nick said earlier. It's, you know, hosting these events. It's running project management in terms of learning management system. I love the idea of that. It gives me a lot of purpose and belonging. And again, I feel that it's equipping me with the correct skills I need to ensure that I am successful in the next 2 months and beyond. So at the end of the 2 months, I will have, whatever happens, I have opportunity and option. And I think that's a great thing to have, I suppose, you know, come to the end of it.
That's amazing. Thank you. I don't think we could finish on a better advert for the scheme than that. So thank you so much for joining us. Amanda, thank you for your time as well. I really appreciate it. What a great insight from an employer's perspective as well. And Nick, thank you.
And I'll look out for Tevin on that TED Talk. I'm sure I'll see
That's exactly what we're all waiting for now, Tevin. You've got to make it happen. We'll be there with you, absolutely. And thank you, Nick, as well. Thank you for everything that Pathway are doing on this scheme. I think it's all really important. And I'm sure if you've got any questions that you didn't get to ask, then please direct them towards Nick. He'd be more than happy to answer them or field them in the right direction. And yeah, I think we'll leave it there on time and everything. Can't ask more than that. It's brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you for you that were here and listening, and I will end the webinar. I think it happens quite suddenly, so because there's no easy exit wandering off the stage of these things, it just goes to a black screen and that's it. But thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy the weather. It's incredible, and hopefully we'll see you all soon.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.